specific, I don't remember, but like the Emperor of the Empire or something, but decided that it would be cool to be closer to the year 1000. And so he just had it jump over like 300 years.
All right, we're going to get started. If everyone can take their seats, please.
This theory, like I'm going for this.
We gave everybody an extra 4 minutes.
Propose it.
Please say that out loud.
Public comment, next meeting.
I don't want to use the gavel, but I will. Appreciate your support.
Commissioner Coleman has lost his mind.
All right. We will call to order the work session of the board. Topic of discussion today is the CIP recommendation. So I will hand it over to Al to get started with that.
Very good. Good morning again. And the board has had a couple weeks now, I think, to review the proposed capital improvement plan. We started out presenting this to the board at the March 26th work session, and then finance is scheduled to act on this recommendation on April 21st. Originally, we had a total of 56 projects requested, and that was for a total of $22.8 million. There are 24 projects recommended for inclusion in the 2027 CIP budget and totaling $8.9 million, which is supported by $7.9 million from the general fund, meeting the requirement of 0.20 mil set aside for capital from the general fund. The review of the CIP project request was completed by the CIP review team, which consists of the Facilities Management Director, Information Technology Director, Parks Director, Undersheriff, Fiscal Services Director, Deputy Fiscal Services Director, Budget Director, and Purchasing Manager. The projects were evaluated based on health and safety, legal liability, prior binding commitments and mandates, operational issues, external funding sources, annual operating and maintenance costs, life expectancy, and strategic alignment. So, as you've seen, we've got a list of all the projects recommended and then a list of the ones that were not. So you could see those too. I think to move us along this morning, as we typically do, we invite the department directors that make up the lion's share of the CIP, who are also on the CIP review team for that reason, to attend this work session, present on maybe the 2, 3, 4 largest items, or most significant items in their opinion, in their CIP budget, and answer questions, take comments. And so we have a list. We'll start with facilities and move to IT, then parks, then sheriff, and then fiscal. So at this point, I'll ask Tim to come up and do his brief presentation on facilities, and then we'll work right down the list.
Morning, Tim.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. In honor of a tremendous response that you got earlier, or that you gave to Al earlier today, I'm going to be extra brief and just take questions. So in general, as you can see in your packet, we've got a couple of roofs. We've got some brick that's troublesome at the health department that we want to continue to further evaluate and understand a solution for. Some parking deck repairs and parking lots. So, I mean, high level, these are just things that depreciate over time and need attention. And frankly, I'll just kind of leave it there. If you have specific questions about any of the projects, I'm glad to take a deeper dive with you.
Thank you. I'll give you a tremendous as well. Does anyone have any questions for Tim on the facilities manager? This is page 2, full page, and then a couple lines on page 3. Anybody have any questions or comments? I will say, I'll call on Commissioner Glaren in 1 second. I will say this is the opportunity now for feedback on this. As Al said, it'll come to finance next month. So this is the chance for board feedback. So Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you. Just on the question of the health department, like how old is that brick facade, and is it failing much earlier than predicted? And is there any warranty or anything on that?
So the building was built in the early 80s, so it is an older building.
Yeah.
But you would anticipate typically a 50-year, design life duration on brick before failure started to occur. So we're starting to approach that timeline. But there's just a lot of movement and cracking, and we need to fully understand what's happening behind the brick, what type of water issues need to be solved so that we make sure that the next course of brick or whatever the repair ends up being lasts for another 50 years, not just 5 years or something less.
Thank you.
Others on facilities? Yeah, Commissioner Hildebrand.
Thank you, Chair Green. Thanks, appreciate it. So I don't want to get into like the specific projects. I mean, for me, I depend on you guys, like the committee, and you guys do the day-to-day work, and I don't work in any of these buildings, but you have a ton of requests that haven't been fulfilled. I'm just curious about how critical some of them, if we're waiting in another year, how critical some of them in, because I have a larger maybe question for maybe Al and Jeff down the road. The percentage that we set aside every year equates this year to 8 million. I mean, have we looked at, is that enough? Are we falling way behind that maybe we should look at moving that percentage up so we're getting, and of course that puts pressures on other areas of the budget, but we have to prioritize our work here at the county, and if we're getting behind on some capital projects, and maybe we have to look at dedicating more money to taking care of some of these projects.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I certainly don't want to turn away any funding. I think our roofs are a great example right now. In the asset management cycle of a roof, there's tools that you can use to do a liquid applied membrane over an existing roof, as long as that existing roof is in okay condition. You don't have to peel the whole thing out and all the insulation underneath of it. You can just put a thin layer over top, and that gives you a new extended 20-year warranty. But that's only if you catch it at the right time. If your roof is so failed and it's leaking everywhere and the insulation is all waterlogged, you can't do that anymore. And frankly, a lot of our buildings are kind of at that critical tipping point. So I did put together an asset management plan over the course of 5 years, and frankly, we need about $1 million every year to kind of bring all of our roofs back into compliance. So I think that's a good real-life example of some of the questions that you're asking. Overall, we have a few newer buildings in our fleet of buildings, and we have a lot that aren't new. So I do think there's a lot of deferred maintenance that continues to pile up, and, I worry that we can't defer some of that forever. And then we have the challenge of the bigger, are we going to do additions or significant remodels? And those are really big capital projects that often require bonds, and, we only have so much bonding. Well, I shouldn't say, we have plenty of capacity, but we certainly want to hold our AAA rating and be careful with what capacity we use. So kind of a generic loaded response, but maybe that gives you a flavor of where we are. Certainly there's needs across all of our buildings.
Yeah, thank you for that. I more wanted to raise it as, something that we need to consider as we prioritize the budget and the work of the county. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate, all staff want to make sure that we're being as fiscally prudent in how we're caring for these buildings as we can. And again, I think that roofing example is a really good one. If the courthouse roof, for example, it's roughly $1 million to put that new membrane over the roof, but it would be $4, $5, maybe $6 million if we had to replace it. And we're still going to get that same brand new 20-year warranty on a different, more cost-effective fix. So the timing is important, and having flexibility to attack those problems with funding is important.
I see Jeff coming up, but I think, are you going to speak to Dave's broader question? I think we'll stay on specific to facilities for a minute. Jeff, if you want to take a seat, yeah, perfect. And then we'll answer that broader question as in between the departments, because I'm curious about that too. Okay, Commissioner Pakla was next.
Thank you, Chair. And maybe my question will add to the broader context too. Tim, as we look at the asset management, can you tell me where we're sort of figuring in these long-term operational costs that are associated with things like efficiency, or what I would group into a big sort of sustainability and green-friendly kind of grouping?
Yeah, so Strategic Impact Director Josh was able to provide us a grant for about $330,000 that we were able to analyze all of our facilities, including jail and sheriff's office, to help give us kind of a fresh look under the hood on how each building was performing. I got the draft final report from our consultants earlier this week and need to take kind of one more last deep dive through that. But I see that as our next asset management tool to help us understand what equipment has the lowest hanging fruit on, if we replace that, that's a 2 or 3 year return on investment on energy savings type thing. I was both worried and excited about that project because I was afraid of what we might find, but I guess overall the good news is we were already doing a pretty good job. There's not a lot of low-hanging fruit, but it still gives us a really good report to use going forward and bring good data-driven decisions and recommendations to you in the future.
Yeah, that's great. And I think I bring that up in part because we have such a great community asset in our community action department that does weatherization on the individual residential level, right? So as much as we can do a similar kind of thing on the county level, right, that ends up saving us long-term in the operational space. So thanks for doing that.
Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Chair. So I was just looking at some of the things that were not recommended, and there were quite a few related specifically to the health department. And I was looking at for instance, number 9, which is the South Clinic vaccine storage and prep room. I read the information about what's needed there, and I just wondered how long the kind of measures that are in place right now to provide them with extra storage, for instance, just this one, but there's other ones too, how long those measures can really last before we have to address these issues. Because I mean, they see a lot of people at that clinic. There's obviously a need for this additional space or else it wouldn't have been asked for. So I'm just trying to get a sense of when those temporary measures to provide those resources for them, how long that will last for things like that.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. That project in particular, their equipment is in a room that's much too small for the fridges and the freezers that operate in it. So the amount of air changes that need to happen, it just doesn't really work for a room that small. So we typically have that door propped so that it's exchanging more air with the rest of the building. And it's a non-ideal operational scenario. I think, other solutions for that project in particular is the health department has some access to a lot of state grants. So continuing to explore, can we get a 50% match and how can we lower the overall general fund burden to a project like that is the things that we're trying to do. But yeah, it's an operational challenge, and I anticipate that it will be back on the list next year and probably rank pretty high again. So hopefully we can afford to fund it as soon as next year, and it will continue to be a priority.
I had Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to piggyback on Commissioner Packla's comments about the long-term view. I know you inherited all these buildings, and and you're doing the best you can now to respond to the needs. And these are just comments about how do we prepare in advance for these costs that we know are ultimately going to come. So, for example, some group of Board of Commissioners in the past rested on their laurels. So we're going to build this brand new building over here, and they stamped the approval and away it went. Well, it almost seems like at the same time they approved that, they should have been saying, and you know what, 30 years from now, we're going to need to put a new roof on that building. So we should start saving for that roof now and putting money aside every year, knowing that 30 years from now, we're going to need that new roof. And a good example of that would be the King County Fire Commission. We work with all the fire departments that are members of the Fire Commission, and we help them buy new fire trucks. The day they get that new fire truck, they know that that truck is going to be obsolete in 10, 15 years. And these fire departments then start setting money aside to buy the next fire truck 15 years from now, because this brand new one that they just got, they know is going to go out of service in 15 years. So how do we, it seems like we could set up some type of a system that projects these things so that we are more planned than reactive. And I'm not saying that your requests are reactive, but obviously, when you start getting a roof that's leaking, that's a reaction, and then you have to deal with it. It becomes an immediacy. You know, so for every building we have, they're gonna need new windows, new carpet, new roof, the bricks go bad, whatever. And so I'm just encouraging you to try to, while you're here as our administrator, look at those long-range projections and try to put a system in place that says, Kent County, with everything we're seeing, you really need to be putting this kind of money aside, because we don't know what those costs in the future are gonna be, but we can guarantee you they'll be more than we think they are today.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. We're getting more sophisticated every year in our asset management plans and trying to be more proactive than reactive. Certainly, the best practice is to be more proactive. I think that's going to help us drive costs down, to be proactive versus reactive. And as a Caledonia Township board member, totally agree with your perspective on fire trucks. That's exactly what we do in the township there. And it, you know, I can't speak to the entire use of what the strategic capital fund is intended to be for, but I think that's part of, you know, what it is, as well as to be able to take some of those ups and downs in the expenses that we have year to year. But yeah, I understand and agree with everything you're saying, and it's my pleasure to lead the department that gets to implement that on 15 of the buildings that we own within the county, but there's many other assets, of course, too.
Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, the two courthouse projects that have other funding, what's the source of the other funding for those?
The city of Grand Rapids is a tenant with us in that building, so they pay for their portion of the city attorney space and the court rooms that they use.
Commissioner Womack.
Yes, is Mr. Vandenberg gonna rejoin us?
Yeah, he's
Oh,
heading
yeah.
out.
Yeah, because one of my questions for Administrator Vandenberg is that when we look at this request, are these requests that we have any problem funding that would hurt the county in any way? Because it seems like these requests every penny is very important and has to be watched, but I anticipated it to be even more. So it doesn't raise like this big red flag in my mind.
We can always do better, and we're committed to doing that. However, the system we have has ensured that roofs get fixed when they need to be fixed. We have a county north of us where they were putting buckets out in their courthouse 10 years ago because they didn't have the money to fix a roof. And so between the fact that we have a very well-funded general fund balance and the fact that we have a strategic capital fund on top of that, all that has made us very attractive when we do ratings calls, because we have really prepared well to be able to handle the ups and downs. We can't do it all in 1 year. I'm not sure we want to get to the point where we try to do it all in 1 year. It is kind of a balancing act, but we are able to work as a team with managers of each of the major facilities and operations to make sure that we're taking care of what we need to, and that we have a process to make sure that all things do get fixed. So can we improve it? Absolutely. Can we become proactive and use better systems and thinking? And, you know, we're committed to always improving our game. But I would say that there's nothing alarming to me on the list that isn't being funded this year. And I do think, as Josh is able to look at possible grant sources, if we get something 50% funded, you may see us with the recommendation to do it early, because all of a sudden we have OPM, other people's money, and we might be able to move that quicker. And so to us, this is a list that's alive. You know, we don't simply look at the year ahead and forget about everything else on it in successive years. We're always looking on how we can improve and make things happen faster, but obviously not letting the wheels come off and letting roofs leak in the meantime, so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vandenberg. As I looked at it, I didn't see anything that really gave me any great alarms either is very anticipated some of these improvements. And I even believe that our commissioners 30 years ago, a lot of times I look at Grand Rapids and Kent County, and as a commissioner, I do realize we are still living off some of the laurels of some of the planning from people 30 years ago. Always so knowing we had our rainy day fund, hearing the challenges to why Kent County was so conservative years ago, and, you know, going through COVID and beginning to understand what some of those commissioners back then were talking about, you know. So I'm just happy to be a part of Kent County, and I think it's just one of the best organized, ran units of government in the state. And I'm the conspiracy theorist. I'm the one looking for what's hidden under the carpet. I'm still looking, but I'm just very proud to be a part of this team. Thank you.
Thank you. Earlier, I heard Commissioner Burrell call Commissioner Hennessy ranking member. I'm going to start using that, so ranking member Hennessy.
I wanted to ask questions on number 3, the Health Department exterior brick replacement. And it sounds as though you have already had some structural examinations and engineering work done on this, but yet it also sounds as though we're paying for more studies, and it's only, you know, $100,000 funded out of $1 million request.
Yes.
Maybe you can address that a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So we did some, I would call it preliminary investigation, peeled the brick back in 3 different areas and some of the worst locations to try to understand what was going on. The summary of the report was there's water intrusion challenges, but, you know, only looking at the 3 worst spots versus maybe the places that look fine from the outside also have a problem. So we don't fully, without doing a little bit more investigative work, it's hard to create an exact scope to put out to bid. So the kind of worst case scenario of $1 million was to take all the brick off and put new brick back on the whole building. So I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe we'll find that it's only, say, the south side of the building, and not the entire perimeter. So that's what we need to do some additional investigative work on. Have kind of a full design set so that we can put that out to bid to contractors so that we don't have to spend a lot of time on, you know, day one when we start the project, trying to further define the scope, and then have a bunch of change orders because there's a lot of unknowns. So this will give us a better opportunity to rein that scope in and make it a little bit more concrete on what we can actually anticipate to do versus a broader, not entirely sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for number 12 on the budget, which is the city-county work plan. I was curious about the timeline with that because I know we're going to be moving into a new admin building eventually, but I was wondering what the timelines were for both and if it made sense to make these improvements over these next couple of years versus just investing into the new building.
Yeah, so the completion of the ADA improvement project and the electrical switchgear upgrades, both of those projects actually started in design, I think, 4 years ago, in construction almost 2 years ago. So we're committed to those at this point. And the elevator in the clerk's area, they just peeled away the false wall, I think on Monday this week. So you can kind of see the new vestibule, and we're making really good progress on that project. I think that should be complete in the next 3 months or so. And the electrical switchgear work, they just need to pull the temporary transformers that are on the Monroe Street side of the building out at this point. Everything has been transferred. We're on the new switchgear and new power supply. They had temporary ones to reduce the number of power outages that we were going to need as they made all those switchovers, and they just need to deconstruct those and take them away from the site. So that one should be done in the next 3 to 4 weeks, to answer your question. I think while I'm talking about the city-county work plan, we had put quite a substantial amount of money in for the Calder Plaza project. At the time that CIP requests were due, our understanding with the city was that was going to be delayed until 2029, kind of at the county's request. I think that's still in flux. The city would like to do that work sooner, so it could still happen as soon as 2027 or 2028. And if that does, the county's responsible for 37% of basically putting the plaza back the way that it is. Any additional significant park-like improvements would be city-funded. But 37% of the lower range of the estimates that I've seen is 16 million and as high as 30. So that is a significant project that we don't have as much money set aside for currently and could be a substantial hit to future CIPs. The new building, we're going to have a full board work session coming up in April to bring everybody kind of more up to speed on how design is progressing. And we are targeting bringing a bond, I guess, revision request to you at the late May meeting. And then pending that approval and having funding to actually build the new building, we would be targeting construction in late fall this year. Potentially foundations and underground utility items, but that's also subject to Administrator Vandenberg agreeing with that agenda and same with the board chair. But that's the timeline that I'm pushing for to try to keep the project moving as expeditiously as possible.
I'm going to interject sorry, I'm skipping ahead of Commissioner Ponstein, but it was on Commissioner Morales' questions on the city-county plan. I was going to ask on the 820 over 5, I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. And then what you just said, Tim, is terrifying to me about that large of an investment. So can someone help me understand, and I should probably know this, but I think other commissioners are asking the same question, what's gone into that agreement, or what kind of agreement is there? Does that go back to the, creation of government center? I don't know if that's a Tim or an Al question, but we're both.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to speak high level to it. The documents that I've seen, yes, it does go back to the creation of the city-county government conglomeration and operation and maintenance. Because our utilities are connected, it doesn't make sense for each of us to maintain our own buildings. So because the city has more square footage overall, they kind of take the lead on the operations and maintenance, and that split as far as square footage between the two buildings is 63% city, 37% county. So we pay 37% of the operations costs for electricity and HVAC and things like that. And that same, we both are co-owners of Calder Plaza in the same split, so that 37% applies to basically the care and maintenance and reconditioning of the plaza as part of a larger project. And I've personally been at most, if not all, the design meetings to be a voice in the room and try to make sure that from the county's perspective, the city understands that we are interested in putting back basically what is there. We don't have the funds or the drive, from what I've heard from leadership, that we want to fund something substantially more. And it is a city park. Certainly it surrounds our current county building, but it's been an interesting governmental project to navigate as a partner, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if, my additional question is more about the, I guess governance is the word that comes to mind. Like, who gets to decide that we're going to spend X dollars on Calder Plaza and then the county is committed to doing that?
So
portion of it.
The governance structure over the maintenance of the operations really goes to the City-County Building Authority, which is a city appointee, a county appointee, who's me, and then Tori from the airport is the third. But any allocation and appropriation of funds would have to be this Board of Commissioners. I mean, I can't commit the county to spending millions of dollars on Calder Plaza, nor would I. And so I think that also I sit on the DGRI board, and that's a source of funding for Calder Plaza. And so I have represented the county in that forum as well, as far as our interests with some of the things that have been proposed for that site. So that is kind of how the governance works. It's basically overseen by the City-County Building Authority, and then the maintenance departments of each entity work closely together on the ongoing operations and maintenance, and then also bird dogging proposed projects.
So the building authority would act as sort of a planning and recommendation group, and then the final decision on funding at minimum comes from county commission and city commission on
Yes.
those pieces.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Green. So I really don't really have a question, but a lot of the comments about buildings, I just want to reaffirm what's going to be important on this is, you know, our biggest asset are actually the people that work here. The second one are the buildings that they work in. And my years on a school board, county buildings and schools all look the same. They flat roofs were cheaper to build. The whole building was easier to build that way. But the inherent problem is a lot of times roofing. And something that was driven into me early on was if that roof is leaking, it's too late. I mean, you've pretty much added a substantial amount to not just replace it, but then you've got to, you know, repair it. And I think to Commissioner Hildebrand's point about, you know, are we spending enough money? Well, that's a good question after this process is over. You know, I know the road commission has 5-year road plans where X amount is set aside. I know in the city I live in, it's the same way. There's X amount of things that are being set aside. But, yeah, I mean, it's not just roofs, so, you know, it could be anything in the building. But we got, you know, I've heard echoes that we do plan, we look at all that, and that makes me happy. But for commissioners, you know, we've got to realize that, you know, maintenance of a building isn't as glamorous as something brand new that hits the papers. But that's the most important thing for the people that work in it, is a safe and secure environment. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Morse for a first, and then I'll come back to Commissioner Womack for a second.
Thank you, Chair. So a quick question on number 12, the city-county work plan. So did I hear it correctly that the 28, 29, 30, and 31, so that's like set? That's an agreement that's set? Those dollars are like committed?
So the city kind of leads that guidance, and they meet with me annually, and we review that together.
Okay.
So the Calder Plaza project has been in that work plan for many years, in particular. And
But-
yeah, there's other items, but sorry.
But
go
those
ahead.
ones would be like the construction project that's already going on?
Yes.
Right now, inside the building? Okay. So then the Calder Plaza, whatever that turns into, of this board agrees on however much money, that would be a new dollar amount that gets added to it, where other dollar amounts for facilities are just projected or requested for 28, 29. They're not necessarily being adopted today, or they're just being requested.
Right, it's more of it's kind of like an asset management plan of, you know, this is the things that we see coming in the pipeline, and we want to make sure that you, county, as our 37% partner, are aware of that, so that you can forecast for funding as far in advance as you can.
Sure. So 12 is pretty set, though. We're not, I mean, that one is not negotiated.
Yeah,
For the most
so
part,
let me
yeah.
clarify and say that the things that are regular maintenance that need to be done, just get done. But to turn Calder Plaza into a park for $30 million doesn't fit that category. And so if we have a leaky deck, it's part of our CIP, you ultimately approve that. But that is something that has happened as a matter of course over many, many years, because there is maintenance that just has to happen. And right now, the deck is leaking, and so part of this will be to address that over the next few years, so.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pretend to know anything about leaky roofs, but the comment that you made, it did about the 20-year lifespan, to me, it said, oh, that is really important. Again, know nothing about roofs, but like, yeah, if we need to spend $1 million today, I didn't see $1 million or it even in the next 5 years, but is that part of the other pool of money that is set aside, or it's not in the next 5 years, you think?
So the courthouse example actually was funded in last year's CIP, and
Okay.
we'll get started on that now that the weather's clear. So, and there's a juvenile detention roof in this year's, and the IT buildings roof.
Okay, so they're broke out.
We're
Okay.
basically year 2 of 5 in multiple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else for a first time before I come back to Commissioner Womack, and then Bujak also for a second? Okay, yeah, Commissioner Womack.
Going back to what Commissioner Bujak spoke about the roofs and us being, more proactive than in the past. As a manager of a radio station over 25 years, we've only had the budget to replace one roof, and that was probably 15 years ago. A lot of times it's just repair. Is there anything in technology that is going to help with new roofs or and can you also let us know what the lifespan expectancy will be to buildings we're building that are going to have roofing, to replacing old roofs with technology? Because we see a lot of things advertised too about flat roofs and new technology, but you don't know if it's all true as you watch different advertisement. Is there a new life expectancy of the new roofs that we're building in 2026? Or technology it might advance us beyond what commissioners 30 years were looking at in life expectancy?
Sure. So there's often a range of, solutions, just like in your own home. If you want to have granite counters versus, Formica or concrete poured, there's different options, right? So similar on a roof, there are roofs that will provide a 30-year warranty, but you're going to pay a premium for that. So can you afford that on your initial capital plan? Sometimes the answer is no, and 20 is more of an industry standard. And then other technologies that kind of are emerging, there's, drones can fly a roof, and especially on a summer day that was hot, if you fly that roof at night, and as that roof cools, any places that you've had a leak are still going to show up warm because the water that is underneath the roof cools at a slower rate than the actual membrane does. So that's a simple emerging technology that we can use to better understand, do we have any leaks anywhere that aren't obviously visual from the top? So hopefully that helps.
Yes, it does. That we still know that as far as technology has come, we still don't have a flat roof that we're estimating is going to last forever, or last 50 years or 100 years. So 20 to 30 years is the life expectancy.
Yeah, and some of it also goes to how much equipment do you have on the roof and how often are people walking on it. So the more you can keep that equipment off the roof and in a different mechanical room, that's a benefit. But again, there's cost to that. To house it in the building costs more money per square foot. So it's a constant balance of what can you afford on that initial build of a project, and then, usually if you can do the best materials and the best practices, that's going to help with your long-term operations costs, but there's an initial upfront cost to making that investment.
Thank you, and thank you for your service, your research, and being proactive on what we need to be investing in. Thank you.
Mr. Bujak.
Thank you, Chair. When you came on board with the county, I don't know that you fully understood the scope of, all the work that was going to, and the demand that was to be placed on you with all these buildings and all these administrators and all these departments that are saying, we need this and this is going here and we need that. And so I can appreciate, the balancing act that you're doing and getting this list that, we're working to. As a county commissioner, I appreciate getting, a list of those items that we recommend that we actually address in this CIP. But I'd like to speak to Commissioner Bronstein's comment about the road commission. The road commission, very much the same, gets requests to pave roads. And as we all know, there's a ton of roads that need to be paved, but they can only pave so many roads per year. When you get on the list for paving roads, when the 20 roads get paved, everybody on the list moves up. They don't go off the list. So for all those departments that are putting in requests for CIP, I'd like to make sure that the message is clear coming from this board that we recognize that there are these needs and we recognize that there are problems and that these problems aren't going away. They are on the list. They will move up on the list. And so just want to make sure that all of the departments, because we have a ton of requests here, that we care, but there's only so much we can do, but we recognize the importance and that we'll keep them on the list and we'll keep working on it. Thank you.
All right, I don't have anybody on deck. Anything else for Tim before we move on to others? Commissioner Morales?
Thank you. For number 34, for the internet and remote access hardware refresh, I was wondering if that took into account like the entire package, including any new licensing or software that might be needed to be upgraded along with the new hardware as well?
That's actually an IT item, so I don't know if Mary Beth wants to answer it, or we could wait until IT comes up and ask it again.
You want to wait until we get there, Commissioner?
I can wait.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify for Commissioner Bujak, anything that comes in as a request is still on the list. So you see the out years, it's actually a 5-year plan, and so nothing has been dropped from the request.
All right. We'll come back to Commissioner Morales' question when we get there. Anything else for Tim before we let him get off the hot seat? He's been up here for quite a while.
Overall,
All right.
thank you. You've been very kind. I appreciate you.
You were tremendous, and we were long-winded, so thank you. All right, we'll move to IT. Morning.
Good morning. So Tim is currently fishing in West Virginia, so he has given me the pleasure of presenting these CIPs to you. The two that we have for IT are really end-of-life cycle hardware replacements, so they're not terribly exciting to talk about, but they are necessary. So one is for our internet and our VPN, or our remote access hardware, and then the other is for switch distribution, which is the hardware that helps us connect all of the buildings to our network. So, but I'm happy to take any questions if, I believe there was one earlier, or, yeah?
Yeah. Can you restate that, Commissioner Morales? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Chair. It was just, which I'm pretty sure what the answer is, but I just wanted to check. For item 34, the internet and remote access hardware refresh, if that includes like any licensing or software, that's going to be
That one is
cost
not,
as
no,
well.
this is just for strict hardware replacement, so our software renewals come on an annual basis.
Got it, okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Anything else? Anyone else under IT? Well, you're getting off way easier than.
Well, I am liking
Tim
this,
did.
yeah, hey. I did want to mention, and I don't know, Andy, if you want to come up, do you want me to start talking about? There's one other CIP, which is kind of a partnership with IT and with Circuit Court related to Operation Paperless. So
Oh, great. Yeah,
don't know
Andy,
what
if you
number
want to do
that one
that, that's
was.
fine.
But I know it was coupled with ours.
Now, if you want us to tell your boss, Tim, that you were up here for, like an hour.
Tell him I was in the hot seat. And
I'm happy
I
to
did
do
it
that.
amazingly.
Yeah.
I like it.
Hey, Andy.
Good morning. Yeah, our Operation Paperless, that's basically, e-filing, electronic files going paperless over at the courthouse. We've been at it for, a year and a half. We're still at it. We are making good progress. In the Circuit Court Civil is fully up and running. All of probate is. We've got adoptions and PPOs just went live last month, and we're seems to be over those hiccups. So moving on to domestics first, then criminal, and then family. We do expect to speed up a bit. Part of the process in the beginning is getting everyone used to all the equipment that's needed, getting used to OnBase. All of our judges are now up and running in one of the case types that they have at least. So we do expect to make good progress in the next year or so, which we'll need to.
Good. Commissioner Pacla.
Thank you, Chair. I think this might be a joint question since it's a joint project. As we think about Operation Paperless countywide and particularly with the court system, I'm making an assumption that when we think about the hardware replacements, we're thinking about current volume of what that Operation Paperless is going to be. But are we also modeling what happens if now that it's easier to do paperless filing, we have more people doing it and therefore we need more capacity? I just want to make sure that when we do a big
Yes.
project like the hardware replacement, we're also thinking about those
That is
what
part of our
ifs.
consideration, and that really impacts our storage needs and just kind of, I think when we did our presentation a few weeks ago, I don't know who all was here, we talked about how the amount that's in, the number of pages in OnBase has doubled over the last 2 years. And so, yeah, we do project for our storage needs on that project as well.
Great.
All right, anything else and we don't have anything else under circuit court, so,
Check 2 boxes.
yeah. So anything else for these guys while they're here? All right, great. Thank you both, appreciate it. Working down the list, I think it's Director Swayze's opportunity to sit in the hot seat.
Great, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the parks projects today. So this year we did focus more on some of the unsexy maintenance projects, kind of a theme that you're seeing throughout the CIP. First one is pavement replacement at Wabasas Campground. We have to do this every year at one of our parks. We try to maintain the pavement on a 20-year schedule. So Wabasas is due. Wabasas is an interesting one. When the Parks Department came over from the Road Commission, they primarily abandoned all of the roads that terminated inside a park. And for some reason that we can't figure out, they didn't do that with Wabasas. And the plan is to execute that this time, but we're not taking in defunct roads. So the Road Commission is actually helping us to pave these roads as well, similar to the partnerships that they have with the local units of government. So the project will actually be bid out and done by the Road Commission. When everything is paved and ready to go, then we will take over the roads and they'll become park roads. We have 7 enclosed shelters in our system. 3 of them are in desperate need of window replacement. We had to screw a lot of them shut because people were opening them and they would slam down their hands. Can make for a pretty hot summer. None of them have HVAC systems, so this is really something that we need to do, not only for the maintenance of the buildings, to provide a good customer service experience for the people that are renting those facilities. The past 5 to 10 years, we've done a lot of playground replacements. This year, we've identified 3 playgrounds that, though they've reached that 20-year mark where we look to replace them, they're in pretty good condition and continue to remain popular. We've identified 3 that are in Gordon Park, Long Lake Park, and Wallfield Park that we think we can get an additional 5 to 10 years out of by replacing some of the parts that are damaged, trying to extend the life out of those. While it is an investment into these, getting the extra years means that we won't have to replace them at $300,000 or $400,000 a pop until more parts of it break down. Rogue River Park, we're planning on doing a 4-season restroom conversion. So we started this back 2 years ago where we opened our first 4-season restroom in Millennium Park. This year we'll be opening a 4-season restroom at Wallfield Park. We have plans for a 4-season restroom at Johnson Park, plans for a 4-season restroom at Chief Hazy Cloud. Rogue River Park is extremely popular because of its location on the White Pine Trail. People have been asking for this for 10, 15 years. We did look at the balance between should we tear down the restroom and rebuild it, or can we do a conversion? And we think this is one where we can do a conversion and save a little bit of money. The restroom's in pretty good condition. And then our last funded project was our automated gates project. This is the 3rd year of this. We did a pilot project at Creekside Park in Gaines Township in 2024. Went over really well. We're doing 3 parks this year. We have plans for 3 parks next year. We're really focusing on the parks where there's a return on investment. For a lot of our gated parks, we have to send out a seasonal staff specifically to open that gate in the morning and close that gate at night. And we have a 2-hour call-out policy. So even if it only takes that person 15 minutes to go out and open and close that gate, we pay that for 2 hours. So our operations manager, Josh, put together this amazing spreadsheet, has all the ROIs for all of our gates. Some of them we probably won't end up doing, right? So if we have a full-time park person there in the morning, and then they can close it at night, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're trying to pick off the ones that have that ROI. As we're doing it, we're also trying to upgrade things that continue to help not to have seasonal staff to go there on one-off. So one of the big ones is bathroom locks. So if we can, we also install automated bathroom locks to make sure that you don't doesn't make sense to have the gate if you still have to have this seasonal employee go out and lock the bathroom. So, and that's our request for this year.
Great. I wanted to note that myself and I think a couple other commissioners had a conversation about the Rogue River Park property acquisition with Ben and some of the team. That is still something we're looking at. We're pursuing some other dollars right now on that and having some conversations with the state who owns the property, DNR. So probably more to come. I don't think that's going to go away. Commissioner Faber and then Hildebrand.
Great, thanks, Ben. Couple things. I was actually at Waffield for the first day of spring. That playground was packed, and it's a great playground, and it was well maintained. The new dog park looks absolutely insane. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait once the community discovers that asset. So kudos to you and your team. Question is, I know we do a 5-year master plan. When is our 5-year master plan sort of kicking off and going to be delivered?
Yeah, yep, so our current plan expires in 2028. So you may see a little start of it in 2027, but 2028 will be a bulk of the work for that. I will just preface, not to spoil the surprise, right, but we've traditionally only updated our plan as we've gone through the process, and it's time for us to have a new full plan, so I'll probably request funding to do a restart from scratch on that.
Yeah, that's a little bit where maybe I was leading the witness on that. But, you know, I think when I look at
Not bad.
yeah, right. Channel my inner Stan Stack, the older one, not the younger one. The volume of park projects sort of coming down the pike, and it feels like every year we sort of scratch at the surface of what potentially could be done, and I kind of look forward to, an opportunity through that master plan process, and some of that is what the partnerships with the townships look like, and figuring out some of these funding, other people's money funding scenarios, which parks have the ability to do more than a lot of our other departments. They can access, like we approved earlier, the state funds or come up with these unique partnerships. So I look forward to that. I think that could really inform how we view these projects kind of moving forward. And having been in the park space with the city, it's always difficult when you're putting a new playground up against a police cruiser and who's going to win that battle, right? And so, I just want to, I commend us all that we continue to put these dollars towards parks, but also continue to look at how we can enhance, grow, support the park system beyond just these one-off CIP projects. So the question I have then is, it didn't look like in this year we're doing any paved trail projects. Can you remind me how many miles of paved trail we have, how many we're adding now through the Greenway, and how are we, it goes back to Commissioner Bujak's example of the road commission, like, what do we need to be thinking about as we move forward on a maintenance plan for that trail system?
Yeah, so if you're looking just at our regional trail system, right now we have 35 miles throughout those 4 systems. So that does not include Millennium Park, which also has 17 miles of trails. There's different funding scenarios for all of those. For example, with Kent Trails, we have a partnership with Byron Township and the city of Granville and the city of Wyoming to help fund the maintenance of those trails. With the Millennium Park Trails, there was a separate foundation money set up to help pave those. But those sources were all set up in a time where it was a lot easier to pave trails. Price has gone up basically threefold since then. When you look at the Grand River Greenway, we're adding 9 miles of trail this year. Fortunately, we're adding trail in areas with partners that do have trail millages. That have come to the table and talked about how we can partner going forward. Those haven't been formalized yet, but, having good relationships and the leadership that DGRI has shown in trying to put together an operations and maintenance plan, those things are being thought about. So I think in the coming years, especially before the Greenway is completed, we'll have an idea of what the long-term, not only the cost associated with that, but the standards as well, right? When you're having these big multi-jurisdictional regional trails, nobody cares when they leave the invisible wall going out of Grand Rapids and going into the city of Walker and then they want to have a unified experience through the whole thing. So making sure that us as a group can hold ourselves accountable, that the people are having a unified experience on that trail is super important.
Yeah, I think it's really great that we're thinking about that, the experience of going from the gilded trails of Ada into, the pothole-ridden trails of Lowell. How do we?
We have gravel. We have gravel.
Gravel, right. How do we really think about the county's role that we're going to play in ensuring that there's a shared quality sort of across that system, realizing there still will be some variation, but I look forward to that conversation. Sorry, I went a little afield, but just noticed we weren't hitting any this year, and just encourage us to keep moving.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I will mention that Lowell has been an amazing partner.
Yeah, Lowell's catching strays out here this morning. With that, Commissioner Hildebrand, your rebuttal.
No, that's all right. Not at all. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ben. I think I brought this, I like the automated gate concept. I think I talked about this before. I mean, the park I go to, has the old-fashioned gate, and the guy down the road comes by every morning and opens it, and then sometimes he oversleeps, and, it's not open on time, and people are parked along the road. He must get a property tax break or something for doing it, but, so, for parks that close at dusk in the evenings, and with these automated gates, is there still a monitoring that goes in effect? Because, to make sure people are out of the park, so you don't have public safety issue going on in the park with the automated gate?
Yeah,
How do you
so
address that?
Hopefully nobody's listening, but they're set up, so if you're in the park when the gates close and you go to leave, they open automatically. So people that are in the park after hours can get out, but you can't get in after hours.
Right, I get that, but if the park closes at dark, we want everybody out of the park.
Yeah.
So they're not partying in the park or, doing all kinds of crazy stuff after dark when they're not supposed to be there.
Yeah, so when that happens, we hear about it. There are neighbors to all these parks, so we've had, last summer, we had issues at Luton Park a couple times. Even when the gate was closed, right, you can close a gate, but a lot of these parks are 200, 300 acres, you can find their way in. So we'll continue to address those issues. This is really more about keeping the honest people honest.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Pacla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll follow up to Commissioner Hildebrand's question. I think it'd be great to, in maybe your annual report, have some conversation, or at least some data you're sharing with us about the use of these automated technologies. I love the notion of not having to pay somebody 2 hours just to drive out to open and close. I also love the automatic mowing that's going on in some of our spaces. I'd love to see that spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet kind of guy, so I'd love to see that spreadsheet that's looking at the ROI. But I'd also love to hear, are there instances in which we're finding that maybe we need to modify the use of them, and have a camera that's also showing us the parking lot to see that there's 15 cars still there having a tailgater after hours kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it might be just a useful thing to work into that conversation on an annual basis, mostly because I think the technology is really cool and I want to see where else it can go. But I think you could also address that concern.
Yeah, I can make a point of that. And then to go back to that, I should have mentioned, like when we did the gate at Creekside, we do have a camera pointed specifically at the gate, so we can technically track when people are leaving, after hours. So we've incorporated things like that as well.
It seems like something that would be a nice fit for Arctic too. I see the sheriff nodding in the back, so that'll be a nice tie-in. Commissioner Oliver King.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably a silly question. When you say updates, what does that mean?
Are you talking about the playground?
Playgrounds,
one?
yes.
Yeah, yep. So, for example, Commissioner Faber talked about the playground at Wallfield. It's 20 years old, still incredibly popular. When we put these in, we have to put in like pictures and stuff, right? So there's a big platform where all of the rubber coating has rusted off or worn off, basically. So now there's a exposed rusted metal edge. So we'll actually take off that platform and replace it. So some of that work we can do ourselves. There was one playground where there's a pole that needs to be replaced. So there's some of it needs to be done. So there's various things that we can do to the playground to make sure it's safe so that we can get another 10 years out of it.
And then I noticed, again, this may be another crazy question, you don't have anything in terms of updating signage or signage. So I was kind of surprised that there's no mention of that.
Yeah, so we do a lot of our signage through the operations budget in-house. We still do have a CIP that the board awarded us back in 2025, I believe, to do a unified signage program on our 35 miles of regional trails. We're actually really excited. The West Michigan Trails and Greenway has applied for a TAP grant to actually help us expand that funding significantly, not only for us, but for basically 200 miles of other trails in West Michigan. So we're holding out that they're going to get that TAP grant, and we can use our funds as a match for those funds to make sure, again, you know, as you're riding these trails, a good example is the Pioneer Trail, right? So we have the Pioneer Trail that goes to Ottawa County, but then it connects up immediately with a Makatawa Trail that goes all the way out to the lake shore. So we want to make sure the signage on that trail is unified throughout. So very excited that West Michigan Trails is coordinating that, and hopefully they'll get their grant.
Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ben, for all you do. Now, I put a lot of pressure on Tim, so I'll just put a little pressure on you.
All right.
And basically the same comments, I'm going to, echo on Commissioner Faber's comments about, looking down the road and making sure we can, maintain these things that we're putting in. The minute we put in a parking lot in a new area, we know 25 years from now, we're going to have to replace it. So again, anything that your department can do to look down the road and say, yeah, this is how we're going to work that into the picture of maintenance and financing for those things. I do want to ask a question about the Thornapple River Bend Park. Obviously that's near and dear to me. It's actually walking distance from my house.
Oh, very cool.
And
Amazing
it's
park.
in my district. And so my constituents will be asking about it because, I'm supportive of the recommendations, and it does not include Thornapple River Bend. And Al told me that, these things stay on the list, don't worry, but I don't see, the CIP comes in this year, and then it falls off the list. And I'm like, ooh, what does that mean? We're gonna have to wait, it doesn't come on there 28, 29, 30, 31. It's gonna come on in 32, 33. Where are we stand with Thornapple River Bend?
So I think Al's reference was that things that don't get funded this year, when we're back in front of you next year, could be on the list for 2027, or we could repopulate it somewhere else. So Thornapple River Bend is an incredible piece of property. It's really important to our department. We do have some CIP funds out there. Basically, this request was kind of a supplement to kind of move that process forward. But we're really interested, especially in getting water access out there.
Okay.
So if you bid on that stretch of the Thornapple River from 84th Street down to Roos Park, it's incredibly popular in the summer. Have all sorts of problems with parking down by the dam. You have all sorts of problems with parking at Roos Park. The Thornapple River Bend property can be a great exit point for that stretch, not only because there's obviously plenty of space to park, but it's before a series of rapids. So that's a family-friendly section. A lot of times the families want to get out before they get that rapid section. So we do have some money to start in that project, and I have a sneaking suspicion that when I'm talking to you next year, it will be on our list as well.
So just a little pressure on you, not a lot. Thank you.
Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. Hi. I wanted to ask about item number 39. Well, not I really asked, but really just like voice some support for that. And I do have a question attached, but to me, it seems like the $195K for replacing those windows seems like a pretty good investment considering we get like $1 million in revenue. And I was just curious about how much other revenue the Parks Department also receives or makes annually?
Yep, so, yeah, kind of put me on the spot. So generally, our goal for earned revenue is 40% of our budget. The past 3 years, it has been somewhere in the range of 48 to almost 50%. So our main revenue sources are the Kaufman Golf Course, Wabassis Campground, Millennium Park, and then our enclosed shelter rentals. So I don't have the number off the top of my head. I know it's in the 3 million range. I want to say 3.2, 3.4, somewhere around there, but it does fall in that upper 40% range of our operation expenditures.
All right, anyone else for parks? I had one small question on item 48, Luton Park, the lot improvement for Keys. It says total 630, but I don't see it in GF grants or other. Is that one recommended or not?
The Keys lot improvement?
Yeah.
So no, it was not recommended. There was a issue when the first copy of this came out. There was just an error in the spreadsheet. So the story behind that is that Cannon Township is actually extending Cannon Trails to that parking lot, and they're building a trailhead there as well. So their investment was $630,000. If you've been to that Luton lot before, it was actually just built because that's where the house was torn down, and it's offset from the intersection.
Yeah.
And our thought was, well, if they're doing this project, we could spend a little extra money, relocate the parking lot to match up with that, intersection. But it wasn't funded. Cannon's still planning on doing the project anyways. I got a meeting with them next week, so.
Great, thank you. All right, I think that puts a bow on parks. Thank you, Ben.
Great, thanks.
Appreciate it. Up next is Sheriff.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm actually here to fill in for Under Sheriff Muir because he sat on the CIP committee, and I didn't realize I was doing it today, so I actually had to get called back. So forgive my brevity on some of these, but do you want to do questions? Or you want me to go through the list?
I don't know if you need to go through it, Sheriff. Everybody has it and has had it for a little bit here. If there's anyone that you want to highlight on here, that's great. Otherwise, I'll just open it up for questions from the commissioners.
Not in particular, no.
Okay. Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, without funding for the correctional building facility planning study, what's the plan absent that funding?
So we did have an extensive amount of conversation since last we spoke on that topic, and that planning does need to happen, but it does, as we alluded to, need to be aligned with whatever funding strategy there's going to be for it, because doing the planning 2 or 3 years prior to the project can cause it to get outdated, need to be updated, in the end, cost more money. So I think there is a broader understanding that the timing of that funding needs to be discussed, has to be kept in alignment with the rest of the board strategies and different initiatives you have. So we are going to apply steady, constant pressure, but wait until it's the appropriate time to do the plan.
Thank you.
Others for Sheriff. You have one, Commissioner Morales?
Hello, Sheriff. For number 75, I remember when we toured the jail, I was pretty dismayed to see just how rustic some of those systems were. And I was just wondering, as far as like the order that they're listed in, would you prioritize the armored vehicle replacement over the jail electrical systems, considering they're both similarly priced?
You know,
or do you consider them about the same level of priority?
About the same level. You know, our organization is kind of broken into different specialties, as you might have noted as we do some of our presentations. So that was the number one agenda item coming out of the jail facility.
Yeah.
And the number one item coming out of the law enforcement components was the armored vehicle, but both really critical and obviously hoped and expected they would both be funded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Sheriff, that puts a bow on the electrical and that piece, I think, right? I don't
I
see it on the
really
go
hope
forward. I
so.
know we've had that on for a few years. so.
Yeah, it's been, we discussed, you can't do projects and corrections all at once because of having to stay operational in each of the different portions of the building. We do have a major transition that's happening in May that will be the second to the last step on the jail electrical. So obviously, hoping that that all goes as planned and it does what we expect it to. Yes, this would be the last installment on that. And then again, the jail controls, and then also the workstations that support them, because it's actually like an inset that will, the needs of that dictate the electrical system. So we think they're all aligned, but obviously, as you're doing retrofitting a facility, things do come up, but I expect this will manage it.
Yeah, may I include a follow-up?
Yeah, please.
Was your question about blending 75 and 76? Because that was what I was going to ask.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. Is it possible to do 75 and 76 kind of all at once, since they are both related to the jail electrical control systems?
They originally were all one project.
Okay.
But because part of it has to be done before the other part can be operational, we really have to kind of stagger their implementation. But they both will conclude relatively similar timing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And which one needs to come first? The electrical controls and workstation or the key control system?
Oh, the key control system, I'm sorry, I was going to the wrong one. Those are somewhat unrelated.
They seem similar.
They're
I
in
guess
the
that's-
same area, but key control has to do with, like if an officer comes to an area and needs keys to run that section of the jail, it actually has to do with how they check them out and how we know they go back in.
Okay.
And that they're updated and inventoried and that the appropriate keys are there for emergency operations. So although they're in the workstations, they're not really related to one install. They're gonna be happening similar timelines because we're essentially working our way through that entire workspace and updating everything as we're there. But gotta stay operational,
Right.
okay.
Thank you.
If you're wondering what the old electrical controls look like, if you've seen that documentary on Chernobyl, it's about that vintage, so.
Right.
It's like a time machine.
But,
Captain Lyons showed us around that, saw some of that, so.
it is amazing how many years we've been able to get out
Yeah.
of some of those things. And I'll note that the roof we're replacing is actually 24 years old, so that's a very valid timeline, so.
Others for Sheriff, we got two down here, Pakla, and then Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, thanks for being here. I'm looking at 82, the boiler replacements. One of the great opportunities we have with CIPs is to invest in things that then reduce operational costs down the road, right? And I don't suspect that we're going to save $1 million with this project over the course of the 2 years that we're doing it over the course of time, right? But I would be interested in knowing sort of what that operational savings is to you all, because I think it's an important thing for us to make sure that we're, again, that's the purpose of the CIP, or part of the purpose of the CIP is to do those things that operationally are cheaper for you in the long run.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to administration here who do a very good at kind of budgeting and understanding where those costs are saved.
Yeah.
That is not something we actually see in the sheriff's office budget.
Perfect.
So although I know it's an efficiency, it's not really something I'm able to track.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that.
Yep.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. For the 4 projects that weren't funded, how dire are they to have? I personally like funding public safety, and I'm just making sure that it's not something that's of dire need.
Yeah, so we were really happy with the process this year and thought that things were weighted quite appropriately as you look at the big picture and things on a whole. We believe that the timelines that are slated for the projects that are yet to come are appropriate and that we can wait for those. And then, obviously explore other funding options in the cases that we might have a chance to do that in the meanwhile. So I think we're in good shape if these are approved. Yeah.
Others? I had a quick question, Sheriff, on the South Kent, the substation. I see we had it at a 600 request, not recommended this year. But then I see a 28 request for, or maybe possible request for 6.5 million. Can you give us some color on what that is or what the situation is? South Kent Substation is co-located with Gaines Township, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we are essentially space locked in that building. So originally opened that building, I want to say it was probably 2008. It had a very, small contingent of officers that were stationed down on the south area of the county. So just to put the timeline in perspective, that was before M6 went into the south end. It was before the exponential growth we've had on the south end. We've had very good partnerships with all of the Byron, Gaines, Caledonia townships that are largely serviced by this facility. But we have tripled the contracted officers that report out of this location since that contract was initially signed. We have done quite a bit to try to improve workflow within that south sub to get the most out of it that we can, but it needs to be on your projection that another facility will be needed. And again, just the age of the building at that point will also be a factor. Gaines Township is not necessarily excited about expanding on that lot. It doesn't work well for them, so we are a lease in that facility. We do paid, be there monthly, so one of the options would be to build our own or lease with another partner. I think those things all need to be explored. The reason why you see a $600,000 request is it's typically 10%, whatever your budget is. So that was relatively what it was for the North Complex. And again, for all the reasons you need to be up north, you also need to be down south. We have a large amount of our population that doesn't find their way into the city center for general business. They want to be serviced at the south area of town. It facilitates transportation. There's a lot of people who get to that south substation either by bike or on foot or, car sharing to get to our services.
So that 6.5 is a back of the napkin
Yes.
estimate on what a new sub would cost, absent the actual planning that needs to go into that to get us to a better
Yep.
estimate. Okay.
Largely speaking, it will be relatively similar to the North Complex.
Yeah.
So that's where that number comes from.
Similar form and function.
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
All right, anything else on sheriff? You got out pretty easy
Yeah,
today
I'm feeling
compared
it
to
too.
some of these years. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. All right, we've just got a few to clean up. We did circuit court. Madam Clerk, would you like to speak to your item on here? You have one that we're not doing this year, but it's on for next year. Do you want to speak to that?
I don't need to speak much, just that I feel like both administration and fiscal services, as well as your leadership, are in tune with the dynamics and uncertainty around our election equipment and the timing of that, and the uncertainty of where the funding's coming from. So we're just kind of keeping this here so that it's not completely off the radar when and if it should come to this level for this funding.
Thank you. I mean, we definitely appreciate that. I was talking with Commissioner Merchant before this, and said, as important as this year is the outlook on the 5-year. So the more that we get from, and I know admin's been great about pushing departments to do that, to give us the outlay. So the more we can do to see what's coming down the pike, the better. So we appreciate that.
I appreciate it as well. Thank you.
And then I do want, just before I know we're gonna we'll do fiscal services, but I did want to come back to, he left before we could come back to his question, but I don't think we put I had Jeff sitting up there that whole time. But I think we have I do want to have a real brief, because we've been at this for a bit, but discussion on I think fiscal policy around what we do with CIP, because I think Commissioner Hildebrand raised a good question. But Jeff, do you want to speak to that item 97? It's the only one you got on here.
I know, it's really short. So this is the debt payment. This was partially paid out of capital, which was decided long ago when these were issued. So we have a few years left on that payment. This is also one of the ones that are being refunded that you approved this morning, so these amounts should go down just a little bit. The other one is the one we have the larger savings on. So anyway, we've been paying for part of that debt out of the CIP for a while. And if you want me to talk to process real quick on the point two.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that'd be great if you
Yeah,
can do that.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Hildebrand left, obviously, but.
I'm sure he's listening to the stream.
I'm sure he is in the car. So our process, basically, you know, early on, this is step 2 of our annual budgeting process. Personnel is first. This year we decided not to add personnel, and then CIP is next. So we look at the overall revenue projections and try to determine how much we think we can afford that year, knowing our policy limit is 0.2. Last year, we knew we had some additional resources, and I think we ended up at a 0.285 allocation to CIP. So it does vary year to year. This 0.2 this year is the lowest I think it's been since I've been here, and that is because there was multiple other things going on. We had the wage reopeners with all the union contracts this year. We weren't sure where that was going to get settled. And then the additional capital projects, obviously, we've been talking about a new Fuller Weaver and possibly other moves in our building facilities. We weren't sure where that was going to all land. So we made the decision early to try to limit CIP to the lowest amount that we could by policy. And we let all of the departments know that early. So we had a process early on. We had a pre-meeting before capital went out to tell them our plan on all this. So there was no surprises. And actually, this is one of the smoothest CIP processes we've had, even though the amount's been lowest. They all submit their projects in ranking order. I think almost everyone's projects, their top 3 or 4 were funded, and we left the room, we all looked around at each other and said, is there anything on here that didn't get funded that you really, really need? And the answer was no. So I think we're maintaining to Commissioner Bujak's point, we're maintaining our assets. I think we could always do better, like Al said. And as far as building reserves for all of these things, strategic capital, I've never seen a government fund strategic capital like this does, and we use that for these types of things. I mean, a few years ago, there was an emergent need with the jail doors where prisoners were kicking them open. So we funded that out of strategic. I think it ended up being $6 to $8 million project. So that's what these resources are for. They're for the emergency roof repairs that may come up, or any of those other emergent needs. If there's a ranking on the sheets that says this is a risk or a possible liability, and if the answer is yes, we typically will find resources today to do those, to avoid any potential risk in the future. So we have flexibility in our budget, and strategic capital is used extensively for that. And a real brief comment on the city-county work plan. So they work together, their internal service teams on projects. One of the biggest one I remember is the HVAC here. They originally anticipated that to be 11 to 12. It came in over 18. So they split that into 2 phases because the city has to be able to afford their 63% as well. So we work with them in conjunction to try to figure out what works for everybody's budgets and then try to fit it into a long-term plan. So that would be my comments on all of that.
Great. Yeah, go ahead. Minority Vice Chair Faber.
Thanks. Just a question on how long does a department, so if we approve something 3 years ago in our CIP and it hasn't happened yet, how long does a department, how long can they kind of hold that CIP fund? And if funds aren't spent, where do they go to?
So, I mean, we kind of leave it up to the department. Sometimes things get delayed, but we do monitor that. So the other piece we put into play, I think when we changed the CIP policy, is we increase the ability for Al to transfer administratively between projects up to $100,000, which gives, so a lot of times departments, we're looking at a fence potentially up north right now. It wasn't in a CIP, but they can find other remaining balances in other CIP projects that we can transfer over there. So we do have some flexibility that way. So that's sometimes what happens. Sometimes they just get extended because they are multi-year funds and there's no accounting reason why they need to spend. But eventually we will close them out to an undesignated capital category.
Okay, great, thank you.
Others? Yes, Commissioner Ponstein.
Yeah, mine's really quick. I tagged on to Commissioner Hildebrand's comment. What, CIP aside, what is the percentage of our budget goes to maintenance and upkeep of the building that comes out of there?
Typically, these are 25,000 and over, but each budget has a lot of maintenance, typically in facilities budgets. And I don't have the total facility maintenance budget line item with me. We'd have to look that up. But a lot of them are covered during the annual maintenance just out of their operating budgets.
And that's all out of the general fund?
Depending on health department, it depends which funds, yes, generally.
Others? I had a quick, the CIP policy that is a function of the county's fiscal policy, correct? So that's something that's been adopted by the board. I don't know when the last time we made revisions to it was.
I think it was a couple of years ago.
I know we did it, I think, since my time here, but, but that's a matter of policy that's under the purview of this group. If we wanted to make an adjustment to it, we could. We'd obviously we'd work with the, on fiscal policy, certainly fiscal services and administration, but that's under our purview and in our direction.
Yeah, there's no accounting rule that says we have to assign a minimum to capital, so.
And do we have a minimum and a maximum in that policy?
No maximum.
Okay, just the minimum. And that's a proportion of the, it's a mill, it's ultimately mills, 0.2 mills,
yeah.
right? Okay. All right, anyone else or general comments before we kind of move to close here? Yes, Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair. There are over 3,000 counties in America, and King County is rated in the top 100, I believe right at 100 that I last checked. And I want to congratulate Jeff and Al and the administrative team, all the administrators in this county board for their fiscal responsibility. The CIP process works, and we all have a chance to have a say and input on the expenditures of this county, and we do a really good job of managing the finances. So kudos to the entire team, administrators, board members, everyone for participating in this process. It works, and it shows because we are in the top 100 in the United States of America.
And I'd like to thank Keith. He did all the heavy lifting on this, our budget director. I think you guys have met him before, so.
Thank you, Keith. I had something. Oh, okay, yeah. Just as a kind of wayfinding piece for the rest of the board. So we have this today. Finance will review this recommendation at the next finance meeting or 2 finance meetings? I can't remember. The second one in April, I think. And then BOC will review this and act on it after that.
During the budget adoption, so if finance approves it in April, it'll go right to the budget.
It goes to consideration it's rolled in August.
Correct.
Okay. And then what's the next piece for the full board then in our budget process?
Should be the operating budget review. We have that work session in May.
May, okay.
Yep.
So May operating budget review.
Operating budgets are due April 10, so we'll get those here shortly.
Just for those of you following along at home. All right, public comment. Anybody from the public who wishes to comment today? I don't see any public remaining, just staff. Okay, great. We do have commissioner comments. Does anybody have a commissioner comment? Yes, okay, commissioner question. Commissioner Morales.
Just to be clear, we're skipping the April 9 meeting?
Pardon me?
Are we not having a BOC on April 9?
No.
Okay, just want to make sure.
No, traditionally, we don't have that first April meeting because of the spring break.
Okay, just want to make sure I had the right one.
Yeah, no, you're good. So yeah, we'll only have one BOC meeting in April. It'll be the second, barring something unforeseen, which has never happened since I've been here, but, who knows? Okay, anyone else? All right, with that, we are adjourned.